I have a couple stories this morning that should be kind of fun. One of them has absolutely nothing to do with anything that I'm preaching on today, which is even better. So we recently moved into my childhood home, which is neat, but very strange. I'm actually sleeping in my parents' bedroom. That's weird, right? But one of the cool things is it came with, it's a fairly decent-sized property, and my dad, who we bought the house off of, left his tractor. And this weekend, I knew that it was going to snow, or calling for snow, so I had to put the snowblower on the tractor. First of all, I have a tractor. That's cool, right? I have a dog that wants to sit on the back seat of the tractor. Yeah, that's pretty rad. McKenna's given me a hand there the other day getting the snowblower ready, and she's got the ATV, and she's moving the ATV out of the way because we need some space and stuff, and I'm trying to back the tractor out, and I look over, and the dog is sitting on the back seat of the ATV, staring at me like, hey, look. It's kind of funny. So anyway, I'm putting this tractor on, and I've got this YouTube video going, right? Because I've never put the snowblower on a tractor before. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I watched this YouTube video, and I'm like, okay. So now, you guys know I'm very mechanically inclined. I can figure a lot of this stuff out usually on my own, but I'm also not an idiot, and I have a wife who's smart enough to tell me to make sure I read the instructions. So I go on YouTube, and I find this video, and I get the thing. I'm into it for about 30 minutes of this video, putting pieces together and trying to figure it all out, right? And then the video stops, and the guy comes back and he's like, so I had to start from the beginning because I messed it all up and everything that I was telling you to do is wrong. And I'm like, you could have done a spoiler alert in the comments section, right? So we rip the whole thing apart and we get start it back up and we get it all going and it's all fixed and everything's fine, right? So my dad, who lives now way up in Sprucedale, he's talking about coming down to give me a hand on Monday to do this, but they're swamped because they've got now 1.5 feet of snow, and he has to do the same thing at his new place, right? And he's like, I don't really have the time to really get down there, and he says, the traffic is insanity, and he says, I kind of hate driving down there now on the Highway 11, right? And we're talking about this on Thursday, and I'm like, I hate driving too. I mean, so there's another thing that I don't really like the word hate. I think it's really a strong word, right? But who here likes Walmart? Okay, a couple people, they kind of sort of like Walmart. I was thinking, what is a strong enough word to explain my feelings of Walmart? And I was thinking loathe. Loathe might be a good word. Because again, I don't really like hate, right? Disdain. I have a great amount of disdain for Walmart. The only shopping center that I loathe more than Walmart is Costco. You like Costco? Right? You know, that's true. That's true. That's a true thing. I don't like Costco at all. I don't like the lineups, right? I find there's so much stuff going on. My ADHD kind of is on overdrive. People are walking into me and nobody's paying attention, and I'm hyper vigilant on everything. So it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's horrendous for me, right? And with Walmart, one of the things that I really dislike about Walmart that is good about Costco's big in the States for paying a living wage, right? So they make a lot of money, but they also pay at least something. Walmart makes millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they pay their people at the least that they possibly can, right? I think that's disgusting. That's why I don't like going to Walmart, right? I will actually, instead of going to Walmart, I will actively drive 20 or 30 minutes out of my way to go and find something else, go to find another place. I like Foodland, right? Foodlands or No Frills, they're all independently owned. Okay, so it's actually a family that owns it and they run it. So I will go 20, 30 minutes out there, spend an extra $20, $30 on my food, my shopping, right? Just so that I don't have to go into Walmart, even though Walmart's right there, right? So I have the same thing, kind of like the same feeling that I get about having to drive 20, 30 minutes out of the way, right? I'll do the same thing for Mapleview and Barrie, right? Or even worse, Bayfield Street. Bayfield, my shop is at the bottom of Bayfield. I'll drive way out in the middle of nowhere so I don't have to go down Bayfield Street, take all these crazy side roads so that I could go get my Starbucks, right? Because listen, I'm a simple man, okay? I need my, mocha frappuccino, venti mocha frappuccino with no whipped cream and no drizzle. That's a thing, right? But Mapleview, every now and then, I have to go down Mapleview because that's where my beard guy is, like the guy that gives me all of my beard products. He's down there off of Saunders Road. And I made the mistake the other day. I went to go pick up some more beard stuff, more beard supplies. And I'm like, you know what? It's not too bad. It's early enough. I'm going to drive from Saunders Road, moron, all the way down Mapleview, out of town towards Angus, because we live in that direction, right? I could have drove all the way around the lake, right, the other way, and made it home before we took it all the way down Mapleview. It was just the worst drive ever, right? So as you can imagine, the scenic route it's kind of my jam. I like the scenic route, right? To tell you this one story, so I was driving out towards Stayner, and we were taking the scenic route because 26 was closed, and I came across this farm kiosk, and they were selling the most amazing blackcurrant jam that had bourbon in it. I bought a couple bottles of it. It didn't last very long. It was fantastic. But that's a scenic route thing, right? So you take the scenic route and you're going to stop here. And there's actually out near Stayner, there's an amazing little Jamaican restaurant in the side of a farm, right? They have great Jamaican food there. I think it's right on 26, but I'm not positive. I like those kind of things, right? But what happens, when I had to go to the beard place or to get my Starbucks, because that's important, what happens when you have to go down those roads or go into those places that you don't want to, right? So, good example. Another story, back on Walmart. One day, I had to go pee really bad. Just to be clear, I have not always been the perfect specimen of Jesus follower that you see here as this individual today. But I had to pee really bad, so I went into Walmart and the washroom was closed. Somebody was cleaning the bathroom. And I politely asked the lady if she would just let me use the bathroom, and she was having none of it, so I decided to go to the bathroom anyways. And they called security, and it was just a big whole thing. I don't have a criminal record, so that's good. But like most towns, Barrie has areas that most people want to avoid, right? There's certain spots that you kind of, I don't really like going downtown. It's not that much fun, to me anyways. But just like Barrie, first century Israel had places just like that, right? And one of these places was Samaria. Okay, Samaria is this area that's bordered in the north by Galilee and in the south by Judea, right? Today, currently, part of it is in the West Bank in Palestine. And if anybody's actually paid attention to anything going on in the last, 70 years, the West Bank and Palestine and that whole area is it has a history of not so good things, right? But the Samaritans, one of the interesting things about Samaria is all the people that lived there, they argued that they were the descendants of Joseph, and through his sons Manasseh and Ephraim. And they also believed the center of worship should remain at Shechem, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, on Mount Gerizim, where it had been in the time of Joshua. But the Jews, however, decided that they needed to build their temple in Jerusalem. Now, after the Syrians conquered Samaria, they settled the land with foreigners, right? So, and then those foreigners, they intermingled and intermarried with the Israelites in the regions, and the foreigners brought their own gods. The Jews accused the Samaritans of idolatry, and that they strayed away from Yahweh, and that became a mongrel race, right? So all the people that, are not good, pious Christians. I mean, Jews would go to this place that, they didn't want anybody to be in, right? You weren't supposed to go there. Like like a good Christian, a good Jew would never be seen in Samaria. They actually went all the way around most often to get to Galilee from Judea, which was a whole extra long trip. So, what's the point? Why does this all matter? I always write that in here because when I go off on a tangent, it brings me back and reminds me what I'm supposed to be talking about. Today's passage is the woman at the well, which is John 4 through 30, okay? Jesus is in Samaria, and it's really super long, so we'll break it up and kind of talk about a few important points that I think are important anyways. So, Jesus had to go through Samaria. He came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, which was near the land Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus was tired from his journey, so he sat down at the well, and it was noon. Many of the translations actually say midday because many people argue about whether it was 6 o'clock at night or what is midday, right? First, every commentary that I have on my Bible software to go look at this took a huge issue with the statement, Jesus had to. Because Jesus didn't have to do anything. First of all, he's Jesus. Second of all, most people, like I said, they went around and they avoided Samaria. So why did he have to go there? He could have taken all these other routes, and like I said, good Jews don't go through Samaria, they go around. That was tradition, right? Everybody went around. Okay, so, and then the next part. A Samaritan woman came to the well to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me some water to drink." And his disciples, Jesus' disciples, had gone into the city to buy him some food. Weird thing. Jesus is in Samaria alone with this woman at the well, okay? That's weird, not supposed to do that. And then the Samaritan woman, or I should say, then Jesus asks for water, right? Now, pious Jews would never be seen with a Samaritan woman in the first place, let alone alone. And they'd actually have to, afterwards, they'd have to go and have a bath because they were considered dirty people and they would have to go through a ritual cleaning process afterwards, all right? And then Jesus asks her to give him some water. Now, that doesn't sound bad, but in first century Israel, it was really bad. Really bad, right? So, and Jesus is alone. See, it's so bad that the term Samaritan became a derogatory term, like one that people would be really used to really insult people. So much so that in John 8, the Israelites, the pious Jews, would start calling Jesus a Samaritan. Right? So we're right far into the beginning of this before Jesus becomes that derogatory word, right? And they start calling him this later on, and partially because of, I think, this story, right? So then it says, the Samaritan woman asks, "Why do you, a Jewish man, ask for something to drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" And then in brackets, it says, Jews and Samaritans didn't associate with each other. See? Right? So, and then it says, Jesus responded, "If you recognize God's gift, and who is saying to you, 'Give me some water to drink,' you would be asking him, and he would give you living water." The living water thing we've heard. The God's gift thing I found interesting, and I'm just going to leave it there and let you think about it. So, if you recognize God's gift, and who is saying to you, "Give me some water to drink." And then he talks about this living water. And the woman said to him, "Sir, you don't have a bucket, and the well is deep. Where would you go? Where would you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Jacob, are you? He gave this well to us, and he drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Okay, so where's this living water? Obviously, we know now it's Jesus. Jesus is the living water, right? But she's trying to figure this out because, Jesus didn't bring his pocket bucket. Right? He's not walking around with a bucket on his head as a helmet. right? But then something that caught my eye this morning when I was reading this over again, right? She came to the well to draw water, which means that she had a jar. We find this out later on. She had a jar. She also would have had a bucket. Then why is she asking Jesus where his bucket is? Yeah. And then there's this Jacob thing, this Jacob guy. He's the same guy that wrestled the angel and became Israel afterwards. I find that's interesting. And he's the one that gave them this well. Okay? And then Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks from the water that I will give will never be thirsty again. The water that I give will become in those who drink it a spring of water that bubbles up into eternal life. Okay, Jacob's well is a normal well. People go there, they get water. It's not like there's water everywhere around here, right? It's the desert, so the well's kind of an important thing, right? But Jesus is almost talking like, yes, this water matters, but I have water that matters so much more. I have life-giving water that matters so much more, right? And then the woman said, "Sir, give me this water so that I will never be thirsty and will never need to come here to draw water again." She's not getting it. I don't think the point has really hit home. And I think to some extent, like the narrative for us is this whole story of us trying to figure out where we sit with Jesus and who Jesus is. It's kind of like this impromptu sanctification conversation where we're slowly learning, oh, wait a minute here, something's different with this guy, right? And she's doing the same thing, okay? Jesus said to her, "Go get your husband and come back here." And the woman replied, "I don't have a husband." And Jesus says, "You are right to say, I don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you are now with isn't your husband. You've spoken the truth." Now, this part, I probably had like 10 tabs open to try and figure out, and nobody can really agree what the 5 husbands thing is. There's all these arguments about whether or not she was a prostitute or not, or whether she was divorced, or whether these people died, because like her husband's, she's not allowed to get a divorce in this culture, right? Only the husband's allowed to divorce. So either she's maybe a horrible housewife or a horrible cook, and she ended up with 5 husbands because they couldn't handle it, or maybe they died and she's just really unlucky. Right? Or maybe there's something else going on. One of the commentaries that I read actually talked about the 5 husbands as this whole parallel to the polytheistic gods that the Assyrians would have had, right? I don't know, it's not clear, but it's still interesting. But what's even more interesting is we will figure out shortly why it matters so much, okay? So the woman said, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet." I found this weird, and most commentaries talk about it being weird, right? Because it's almost kind of like again, it's just Jesus and him at the well, and it's almost like obviously John, who wrote this book, must have heard this story afterwards. So it's chances are it's like this was the moment where he realized that Jesus was a guy that was, or she realizes Jesus was a guy that is something special, right? This is that moment where, okay, it's a little bit weird, and you're hanging out with your buddies, and you're like, and this is what happened next, right? And he said this, and this was a big thing, or she said this, and everything connected, right? And she says, "Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you and your people say that it is necessary to worship in Jerusalem." This is a really big statement. And I sat on it for about 3 days before I figured out how big of a statement it was. The Samaritan woman is calling Jesus out on the racial divide between the Jews and Samaritans. She's actually saying, no, hold on a second here. You treat us like crap as a Jew. And Jesus said to her, believe me, woman. Again, it's the same word, woman, that he uses to speak about his mother, right? He says, Jesus says, "The time is coming when you and your people will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem." That is huge, because he's leading us towards the whole fact that now we can have a personal relationship with God. That's going to happen eventually out in the story at the end of John, right? And he says, you and your people worship what you didn't know. We worship what we know because salvation is from the Jews. Remember, the Jews are the chosen people, right? And the Samaritan people are not. So he's making the reference and saying, no, we're getting closer here. You're going to start understanding really quick. And he says, but the time is coming and is here when true worshipers will worship in spirit and truth. And the Father looks for those who worship in him this way. God is spirit, and it is necessary to worship God in spirit and truth. And the woman said, I know that the Messiah is coming, and the one who is called the Christ, when he comes, he will teach us everything. And Jesus said to her, I am the one who speaks with you. Hint, hint, spoiler alert. Jesus just called himself I am. You want to know where else that's said? That's really interesting. Exodus 3:14. It says, God said to Moses, I am who I am. So say to the Israelites, I am sent me to you. And God continues, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, and Jacob's God, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how all generations will remember me. Holy head explode moment for this lady. She would have known this story. Jesus just called himself I am. God calls himself I am. Big deal, big deal, big deal, big deal, big deal, okay? She would have realized at this moment that she's speaking to the Christ, to the Messiah, and that everything that he is saying is everything that she just said that the Messiah would say, right? You probably heard this message before if you've been around for a while, right? Any church, for that matter, has probably preached something very similar to this. But if not, and you may still be trying to figure out why this matters, it's right here. So Jesus' disciples arrived and were shocked that he was talking with a woman. Period. But nobody asked him, like, what do you want, or why are you talking to her? Nobody called him out on this, that Jesus was breaking all of the rules. Jesus was breaking all of the rules, right? There's a rule book, and he was breaking all of the rules. Right? We're only in chapter 4. There's 18 more chapters in John, and Jesus is already breaking all the rules and throwing them out. Right? Jesus was a troublemaker. But wait, there's more. I wrote it in there. It's funny. But no one asks, what do you want, or why are you talking with her? Jesus' best friends weren't like, dude, what do you do? You can't do this. If anybody found out how bad that this was so bad. No, they were more like, Son of God, he'll do what he wants. Right? And the woman put down her water jar and went into the city, and she said to the people, come and see a man who has told me everything I've done. Could this man be the Christ? And they left the city and were on their way to see Jesus. So, what people? Like all the people? She went and spoke to the people. And then all of those people decided that, hey, we got to go and talk to this guy that's at the well because he might be the Christ, and there's something here that's really important that he needs to say. See, later on in John, we start figuring out how much of an impact this moment had on the progression of Christ's ministry, and how big of a deal it was later on after Christ's death and resurrection. We know that, and I'm sure that whoever's preaching next week will land on this to some extent. This was a big deal. This was like evangelism at its finest, right? And this was the most successful evangelical moment at that time. So this is the big deal, right? So we've established Samaria, not a nice place, right? It's where all of the outcasts and marginalized would go, where no good Christian, no good Jew would ever go to, right? And the first time that the marginalized people, that these group of people is ever invited into a kingdom life, right, is at this moment. And it's not with the good Christians. I mean, the good Jews. Jesus walked into an area that people actively avoided and changed everything just by spending a day talking to some woman at a well, right? I've been around Vox for long enough now that I've heard many, many stories like this, right? If you want to hear a really good story, go talk to Tim. You want to hear a story about meeting somebody in the weirdest, oddest place at the wrong time in the wrong city in the wrong place and changing everything? That's a good story. I'm not going to tell a story because it's not my story, it's his story to tell, right? But it's not the only one. Because we are the marginalized people, for the most part. You know, most of us are pretty white and cisgendered and stuff like that, but for the most part, we still kind of hit all of those marginalized areas, and we like to work in those areas. We're involved in those areas, just like Jesus was. This invitation into kingdom relationship for like really churchy, well, what I call really churchy words, is like this whole idea of really heavy radical inclusion, right? Has anybody heard that term before? I stole it from somebody. Because Jesus came and he walked into Samaria, he walked into those areas that people avoided. And he did his ministry there before he went to where all the really good people were, right? And I think for us, just like his culture, our culture needs to change a little bit because that's the area where we need to be doing as much of our Jesus work as we possibly can, because that's where he was. And if we're trying to be like him, I think personally that that's what we want to do. And I think, like, it kind of struck me a little bit when I was reading through this. This was kind of the moment where God is kind of dragging people in and hugging them and telling them that you matter too, right? And that he loves you too, right? So I'll get the worship team to come back up, and I'll say a quick prayer. And if you don't mind, I'm going to say a quick prayer for my daughter because she's in the clinic right now. She's got something going on with her knee. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to work in those places where people don't want to be, where we are able to really effectively show Jesus to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak on all of those things, and I pray that all of us can work out in those difficult situations, in those difficult areas. Quickly, Father, thank you for good friends and good support networks. I pray for McKenna as she goes through whatever this is, and we figure it out, and hopefully it gets healed up fast. And thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name.